Sound sync. 2 cameras. What am I, Howard Hughes? Reference for the kids. Hello there, I'm Greg and I'm making a cover of the Doctor Who theme tune. This is very primitive, basic stuff. I'm using GarageBand, which is the free recording software you get with every Mac. I also use a tiny bit of Final Cut Pro just to slow some stuff down and speed it up again. That's the software. The hardware is 2 keyboards. We have a Yamaha PS55. I googled it and these came out in 1983. This is a Panasonic something or other, an SKKC211, obviously. 2 guitars. This is a little half-size nylon string classical guitar, and I've also got a Squier electrical guitar. My trusty and very old, like everything in this room, Alesis SR16 drum machine. There are lots of lovely drum loops in GarageBand that sound great, but I just wanted to play live and hit some rubber buttons. That's about it for the hardware, except a tambourine, a shaky egg, and a pipe that does that, and a guitar slide. But that's it. So a quick legal disclaimer, more than any other this is very much a not how to do it but just what I did. I learnt to record music in the mid to late 1990s, so we're talking going round to the school music teacher's house in the summer holidays to borrow the school cassette tape 4-track. Thank you, Mr. Hunt, for trusting me with the equipment, which makes me sound 1,000 years old. But then very shortly afterwards I bought a digital 8-track with an internal hard drive that I used to record onto, and eventually over the years I've actually learnt some software. But I've only learnt GarageBand, and I use basic keyboards. This Panasonic keyboard that I bought in my 3rd year of uni, this does have MIDI capabilities, i.e. you can plug it into a computer and use it to play the sound packs and samples that are on the computer. But I can't stop it from being really, really laggy. When I hit the key, it plays the note, but it plays it about a second afterwards, which is no use because you can't play anything. So I'm just using the sounds that are built into these 2 keyboards and a load of the guitar amps, the pre-programmed effects, guitar effects in GarageBand. Sorry, one last thing I forgot to mention. How do I record keyboards and guitars into my computer? With this very cheap jack to USB guitar lead. According to the internet reviews it's rubbish, but it's fine. That's enough apologising. Let's start. So, the sections of the song are the intro, the ooey-oo, the middle 8, which is da 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 da, sometimes included, sometimes not, and the outro, which is just a kind of looping repeat of the intro. So where do I start? I can't read music and I can't play the piano. I can play the guitar, but I barely do on this. It's all one string, it's all just melodies. There aren't really any chords, it's just interweaving melodies. It's actually very simple, but there are just 41 tracks of it. I can't read music, can't play the piano, so how do you visualise playing the piano? I just put in how do you play the Doctor Who theme on piano into YouTube and found this video by the Pi Guy, which has a key visualiser and seems to me the most simple way of looking at it and thinking, oh, those are the keys I push. I can't now play the Doctor Who theme on keyboard, you just figure it out, record it, and then drag it to trash and it's gone. I also found the guitar chords online, literally filmed this off the screen and then combined that on top of the YouTube video that you just saw by the Pi Guy. Thank you, Pi Guy, very, very useful. So I made myself this play-along reference video. So I've got the section there, the timing, the BPM at the top, and I've included a strip which also has the guitar chords on. So this is my go-to video, this is how you do the Doctor Who theme tune. The original song's in E minor, the Sylvester McCoy version is in A minor, apparently there was a phase where it was in F sharp minor, but yeah, the original is E minor. So, which I know because BBC have put all the Doctor Who themes online with information about each one, very, very thorough, very useful. How did I find out the BPM, or the beats per minute? There's a website, just Google tap BPM, there are loads of them actually, and it averages out the rhythm. So, go to GarageBand and set up a project which is in E minor, 4/4 time, 140 BPM. That's your blank project. So that's useful because the click track will be in time with what you play. If you use any of the samples that are in GarageBand, they'll be in E minor. The bar markers will be where your bars are. So it's worth, you can just use it like a tape recorder and just hit record and ignore all that information and just record into GarageBand. But in case I wanted to loop anything, i.e. cut out a bar and then repeat it, like a rhythm track or something, I set up the project properly. So what's the first thing I did? One of the things that this ancient Yamaha keyboard does that I really like is auto arpeggios. Arpeggio is da 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 da, and just playing them every note of a chord. So if you press memory and then the E and the black note to the left of the E, you get an E minor arpeggio. But you can turn off the bass chords and you can turn off the rhythm, and you just have this arpeggio going up and down. That's the thing I needed to record first, because everything else needs to be in sync with that. So that's the first thing I recorded using the guitar chords that I got from the previous reference video. So after that, da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-dum, wanted to record that. That rhythm is very, very fast. So if you were a proper synthesizer person, you would program those notes to go ba-ba-ba-bum, ba-ba-ba-bum. Or if you're much more retro, Delia Derbyshire, BBC Radiophonic Workshop kind of person, as I am, it occurred to me I could take the piano track from that How to Play Along Pie Guy YouTube video, slow it down to 50%, so it sounds like this, in Final Cut, because that's where I know how to slow something down to 50%, bring it back into GarageBand, play the bass line very slowly over the top, back to Final Cut, speed it up to 100%, as long as I keep the pitch the same, because you don't want it going high-pitched. And then that would be nice and fast. So the bass line I'm actually playing live sounds like this. So that's what I played on this Yamaha keyboard. Exported that as just an MP3, I think. Sped it up to 200%. I think I put a bit of reverb on in Final Cut. And you get that. Seemed the easiest way to do it to me. Then I also wanted some beeps, some like beep, 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 beep. I didn't bring these in until the middle 8, but they're just half speed. It's not easy to stay in time when it's this slow actually, so I had a couple that I had to just cut out and move and fix. But that, into Final Cut, speed it up to 100%, and put some reverb on, and I think it sounds kind of great. So here we are in GarageBand. First thing I start with is the bass line that I've speeded up to 200%. It's got a tiny bit of distortion, a lot of reverb on it. It's not really a bass line, it's more kind of, I think of it as the spine. It's just the ba-ba-ba-bum rhythm track. Then I decided it was a bit muddy, Mod Don't Pay the Mortgage, so I copied it and shifted it up 1 octave. There's a pitch shifter plugin in GarageBand, so all you do is go up 12 semitones and it just makes something an octave higher. So you double it up with a higher version of itself. So I added, you can just hear it, God it sounds janky. I then used the, I think, electro bass sound off the Panasonic keyboard for my bass. It's a naff sounding bass sound, but it's got like punch, it's got a bit of... The keyboard didn't have a low enough B key, so again I just cut out the Bs, copied them to a separate track and dropped that down an octave. So they're the brown note. Then busted out the drum machine. There are some lovely, as I said, pre-programmed drums on GarageBand that figure out fills for you. They've got like AI. All the drummers have names. There's one called Sven, who I really like his drumming. But I just felt like playing drums live because I'm being indulgent and doing what I want to do. And then double that up. Because things are in stereo, I tend to work in twos. So if I bring in a treble tambourine, you want a hi-hat or a ride or something doing the same thing over here, or a shaker, or... So again, those drums, because I didn't want them in the middle, I did 2 tracks kind of playing off each other and they're slightly panned left and right. So first guitar, favourite guitar sound of mine, is this half-size classical guitar recorded into that mic using the Megaphone vocal preset in GarageBand. And it just has some kind of... I wanted it quite distorted and toothy. So that's the first guitar. This is Gold Shaky Egg. I recorded it just raw straight into the mic. But then as soon as I put on 60s vocal phaser, it just has this kind of flanging, tape delay, compressed, and it puts all these plugins on for you just automatically, and you get this noise. even though the thing you recorded sounds like that. But put all the effects back on and you get this sliding space noise. Big fan of that. A synth, again using 60s vocal phaser. That's a sound effect off the Panasonic keyboard called Warm Pad, which is, I was looking for any sound that doesn't just start with attack on the front of the note, it fades in. So this is the first use of the electric guitar. Just high notes played up and down on the top E, with a pre-programmed amp called condensator. It's got lots of delay on it, lots of room and big space, literal space, outer space. Then I've got 3 tracks of this. Again using 60s vocal phaser. I kind of fell in love with that sound. What's that? That is this. So I used pitch shifter to make it be in tune, make it be in E minor basically. But when you turn all the effects off, you can hear a little cameo by my cat. But when you put the sounds back on, he sounds like a space whale. So that's my cat. And then, finally, for the intro, God, this is going to be a long video, there are lots of loops and samples pre-programmed into GarageBand, so they're not just music and rhythm and pre-programmed loops, they're also just sound effects. So I searched for things like whoosh, laser, zoom, robot, alien, space, cosmic, fantasy. Just search words that seem, they're not very well named, so if you find one you like, write down what it's called. So here we have 5 tracks of whooshes and crashes, laser noises. This one's called Hung Up Wind. So that's a nice wind that goes up and down. That's a whoosh. This is a riser. That is called dubstep laser. So that's what adds on that layer of, when you actually analyse the mix, very, very loud space noises that you get on a Doctor Who theme. Those are the tracks that make up the intro. Time for the ooey-oo. Cut. So as I said on my previous video, Sylvester McCoy was the Doctor when I was a kid. His ooey-oo is very sawtooth and distorted. It's like a... It kind of rocks, I think. Or you can go with the Delia Derbyshire original water glass whistling X-Files-y whistle. I think I sort of did both, so I may have over-egged it a bit. There's about 6 different ooey-oos all layered together. I knew I wanted to use slide guitar. I've used an actual guitar slide, but a metal screwdriver will do. And then I also thought I could whistle it and distort my whistling, which is something I did on my Mandalorian theme cover that I really liked, was megaphone, again using megaphone vocal distorted whistling. It turns out I didn't have the range, so I couldn't actually whistle the melody in a satisfying way that even using distortion and reverb and all that, it just didn't sound good. So in the end I combined 2 guitars. You need it very distorted to get a sustained note. So I used the amp's American Stack Crunch and Wide Wide Wah. A wah wah pedal. Makes the guitar go wah 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 wah, which is why it's called a wah wah pedal. I'm patronising you, sorry. So American Stack Crunch is the slide guitar. And then because I couldn't quite figure out how to go down to the next string with the slide for the da 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 da, I brought in another guitar where I just picked out the notes. So I wanted it to kind of rock without sounding like a heavy metal cover of the Doctor Who theme, because plenty of those. But then I also wanted to have some kind of X-Files, more ethereal whistling. So I found, I think it's called Blown Glass, which is a sound on that, again, Panasonic keyboard. But I decided that wasn't quite high enough. So I've also brought in a plugin which is a pitch shifter. So I've included, again, up 12 semitones, so there's a whole octave higher. It's really like dog whistle high. But I've only mixed it to sort of 90%, so you get the original note plus, with a 10% mix, a full octave higher version as well. So you go from this lower, again an X-Files whistle to me, to this really, I mean it's an unpleasant sound. So again, talking about working in stereo, doubling things up, that's just another whistle sound that I liked off the keyboard. But then I wanted to see what that would sound like with some distortion, again going for the kind of sawtooth attack noise. So I cut out a chunk of this and copied it onto another track with the megaphone vocal effect on. So that's the ethereal keyboard, but played through the megaphone vocal track, with reverb just turned up to 100%. There are no subtle choices. Reverb was either no reverb, 50% reverb, or 100%. And it's just a knob that you either put halfway or all the way on. So that's the first half of the ooey-oo, and then on the da-da-da-da-da-da, particularly on the modern ones, a new sound tends to come in. You're constantly bringing in new sounds to layer it up to the end. So that's a fairly straight synth string sound off the Panasonic keyboard. And then this is another thing that I can't remember what it is. So I also doubled that up with then you can turn up sustain, vibrato depth, celeste and stereo symphonic. And it's got much more synthy. And then brought in a sort of extra side string. So it's starting to get a bit more orchestral, more like a modern kind of Murray Gold arrangement of the tune. And that's the ooey-oo. So it's middle eight time. Da, 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 da. Wow, da, da, da. Always reminds me of the 1990s daytime quiz show Going for Gold or the Olympics. For some reason it sounds like sporting excellence, I don't know why. Here you want it to take off a bit and open up. You want to start small, you know, bring in bassier notes, bring in higher things like tambourines and crashes, and so it gets deeper and wider, and that's how it gets bigger. It's a hard thing to talk about, but it's fun to talk about. I've never really talked about this before to anyone. So here, those arpeggios I recorded earlier, the da 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 da. It's tempting to have them all the way through because I recorded them all the way through, but I saved them and held them back for the middle eight. So they come in now. Because it has a sort of flight to it, where it's nice and sweeping and triumphant. The melody is played on, again, a fairly straight sound, I think, out of the Panasonic. I think synth brass. That's Yamaha. That ain't Panasonic. So that's synth brass with a little bit of cosmic. I also brought in those synth beeps that I recorded earlier, the beep 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 beep. So I brought them in louder because there was a bit of a dead space where something needed to happen, so those beeps get louder. But that's for mixing at the end. We're not worrying about that yet. We're just recording, we're not mixing. So, doubling up the shaky egg that's been going all the way through, it's time to bring in a tambourine. So it's the same sound, but bigger, brighter, slightly more trebly. And it's not an easy rhythm. Because it's in threes, that's why it's a hard rhythm to do. So shaky egg is already going, but then the tambourine comes in as well. So that whole shaky noise just gets bigger and brighter, and the song opens out a bit. Another thing I've done, this is the kick drum I recorded earlier off the drum machine, put through 60s vocal phaser. So it just has a delay on it. So that's the da 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 da. And then what about the da 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 da? That is sitar. It's the sitar sound off my Panasonic keyboard, this one, played very low down, which I use a lot. So then that's doubled up with so again, generally I would bring in at least 2 new voices for each part, one off the Yamaha and one off the Panasonic. So the slightly orchestral one, it sounds more orchestral to me. Again, these could be amazing samples that are sampled from actual violins and but that's not quite where I'm at. I'm more keyboardy than that. What else is on here? Talk about cutting out a tiny bit of a track and pulling it to another track with different effects on it. Again, I used megaphone vocal because it's my favourite distortion. And it stops dead like that. You can barely hear it, but it just emphasises it. It gives that moment a bit more volume, obviously. Just give it a bit of punch through. And then just playing bass notes on the bottom E string of that guitar. Love that. F sharp, E. But distorted, and again reverb probably on 100%. Yeah, full reverb. Full reverb. Because we don't make small choices in this house. That's the middle eight. Let's do the outro. Not the outro of this video, the outro of the song, and then we'll do... Yeah. So it's outro time, the big finish. If you've got anything, use it. And always hold something back. Hold something back for the end. Unless you're doing like a 9-minute Bob Dylan. Something I really admire about Bob Dylan's sort of 10-minute songs is the band play the same all the way through from start to finish, so you really focus on the lyrics. But that's a whole other... Oh, I could talk for an hour. I quit being a lecturer nine years ago, honestly. I'm not a lecturer anymore. So as you can see here, hi. So as you can see here, we're now at full depth. We're now at 41 tracks. To be clear, I didn't record them in this orderly a fashion. I've put them in this order so that they come in a sort of stepped, organised kind of a way, but record things as and when you think of them. What have we done to make it extra specially ending-y? The big guitars come back in. Nice. So that's a keyboard voice I think called Slow Strings, because it's trying to go orchestral now. So you start kind of McCoy Davison, and I'm trying to get some Capaldi Tennant stuff at the end there. The arpeggios come back in. But again, I've doubled these up with a higher version of the same track. With much more reverb on it. I, again, keyframe or animate the reverb to get bigger at the end. So it disappears off into space. So we've still got those bass notes. There are only 4 new things that actually come in for the outro. Da-da-dum, 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 da-da-dum. Yes, it's pretty huge. It's hard mixing orchestral things. It's hard to know how loud the drums should be. When you're mixing for a band, you sort of feel like it should sound like 4 or 5 people playing in a room, so the drums have a certain volume. But when you're trying to sound like something a bit more philharmonic, I find it really hard to know how loud is a tambourine in an orchestra? How loud is a drum? Is it very drummy with violins and stuff underneath it? Or should the drums sound very far away and like you're in a huge Royal Albert Hall kind of space? And that's just a choice you make, and you can do different mixes, which I have. I've got the full mix, then I've done a guitar mix and a synth mix. Because there are so many tracks here, it feels too limiting to only do one mix because it's full of potential. If you're a patron, you will get free digital downloads every month. In fact, I should do that today because it's the 1st of December. Anyway, these final 3 tracks on the outro are doubling up the synth beeps. Again with an octave down version. And then this is an arrangement melody that I think I've nicked from one of the Murray Gold arrangements, where it goes da 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 da, because there's a gap there. If you're going to have 3, there's a gap there. So one track goes, and then in between, where there's kind of nothing happening, I've added ooh-wee-oo. And then I and used a more straight, doubled it up with a more straight string sound from the other keyboard. So it's a bit more swooping and orchestral. Oh no, there was one extra string part I brought in at the end, which is da da da. So that's all your tracks recorded. I did those in a couple of days, then leave it, get up the next day, drag everything down to 0 and start your mix from scratch. Bring something up. In my case it was the synth bass, the da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-dum. Then bring the other tracks up and around it so they're neither too loud nor too quiet. It's as simple as that. So this is the kind of fun sculptural part of it to me, particularly if you should never really mix with headphones on, but it's fun because it becomes a physical shape where you have and things are panned and interesting, and the song happens around you. It's like being in VR, and that's the fun part of stereo panning things. If you have a tambourine over here going, you might then want a ride going, or something on this side, so it feels balanced. It doesn't have to feel balanced, like early Beatles, the drums are all on one side. It sounds kind of weird to us. I tend to put kick drum and bass in the middle, vocals in the middle, unless you double up the vocals, then you can kind of pan them either side of the drums. It's basically these wheels, and you put things to left or right. Then once you're happy with the volume of those things and where they are in the sound field, in GarageBand there's a thing called, it's called automation for some reason. It's not automated, you have to do it. But if you hit A, it opens up volume tracks. Because the intro was slightly repetitive, or maybe not enough was happening in the intro, here the drums fade up. Rather than just start it, because it started at the start, it was too much the same thing. So it needed something to make it sustain and build. So now the drums are full, but they don't start full. Same thing with the shaky egg, that fades up through the intro. Same with the distorted bass notes just twanged on the guitar. They start low, not silent but low, and then come in. So they're full volume about halfway through the intro. So generally things are one volume all the way through, unless there's a bit you really want to pick out. Everything fades out. But some things really boost up because the track did something I liked. So on that one I just turned the transposer knob on the keyboard so it went down in pitch. Or like American Stack Crunch, the lead electric guitar, I slid down the string that was very quiet, so I just picked it out here. So that's arranged and done. You go share, it's not exporting, it's sharing, which is also caring. And then for me, this is not a sponsored video, but a thing I use a lot, which I discovered a few years ago, is a website called Maximal Sound, and you send him your track, and then when he sends it back to you, it's louder without overriding, it's stereo expanded so left and right sound further apart, it's just better, it's mastered. That's what mastering is, it's bringing out the qualities and good bits of your final track. I use it for every music track I do. It's just that final polish where the track comes back loud and full and wide and bright and cool and good and great and awesome. I'm not sure how long this video is going to be, but I won't do a long outro, put it that way. As always, thank you to my wonderful patrons. I love you guys. It'd be lovely to get a couple of new ones for the Christmas season. It's not what Ebenezer Scrooge would do. Obviously it's the opposite of that. Come in and know me better, man. Come into my Patreon and know me better. I will be sharing all my different alternate mixes of stuff on there, as well as some Doctor Who digital download goodies that no one can get anywhere else. And mainly let me know if you would like to see any more musical making of stuff, because I quite like talking about this. I never have before. I'm a little bit nervous, and that's exciting. And I hope it was inspiring. Music is very, very accessible indeed if you do it the way I do it. But you could also do it better. So yes, that was lo-fi, low-tech, and I hope it was informative. Thanks very much for watching, lots of love, and I will see you again soon.